Welcome to Beyond Understood, o podcast para alunos de inglês que já conseguem se comunicar, mas querem ir além. Nesse episódio, eu converso com Dayane sobre educação nas escolas e o papel de pais e professores na criação das crianças. Entre uma pergunta e outra, eu comento o que eu gostei do inglês dela e coisas que nós podemos melhorar. Se você gostou do meu método e quer experimentar na prática, junte-se ao nosso Speaking Club. Você pode saber mais em leapfubia.com/club. Link na descrição. Enjoy the podcast. Let's do it. What was your high school like? Do you remember anything special about it?
Yes, of course, I remember. My high school life was normal, I guess, as a teenager born during the 90s. So I used to like to go to school to be with my friends. That was the big point, the big thing. So I had met my best friends during high school, my best friends for life. Actually, we keep contact until nowadays. So yeah, I studied in a state school, a little far away from my house. So we had a long walk to get in the school, 40, 50 minutes walking to go and to come back. So, but it was not too much for us because we like to walk and then we talk and talked and play, and was always a good time. It is, of course, I had some difficulties in some subjects. For example, math was not my. I have never been strong in math. But the special moments in general was this moment with my friends. We used to help each other to study, to prepare to tests. During the breaks, we worked together. So the fact that we had contact every day, we shared things, that were the things that I remember the most from my high school time.
So like the experience with friends and all of that.
Yeah, the interaction, to have time to spend with your friends, because now in my adult life, it's not like that. I live in another state and everything has changed. So I especially miss this time, to have time to just be surrounded by people that I
Yeah.
like.
And it compounds. So right, it gets bigger and bigger, or worse and worse by the fact that it's harder to make friends as an adult,
Yeah.
right? Because when you are a kid, then you have that excuse that, oh, we live in the same street or we go to the same school. So there's always like a reason to befriend people. But these days it's a bit
It is
harder to
hard.
find. I
Yes.
I liked something you said very much. So you said something, it wasn't exactly this, but in the lines of as a child from the 90s. So talking about the decade
Yes.
as there. So I'm a child from the 90s, I'm a child from the 80s. So that's pretty good. I'm also from the 90s.
Yeah.
I shouldn't do this because you're a girl, but which year were you born?
91.
Oh, so we're same. I'm from 91 as
Oh,
well. So
we
that's a good
came from
one.
the same time.
Yeah. And I was gonna mention this now that I had the same experience that you mentioned. Like I like to spend time with my friends. So at some point I would ask my dad not to pick me up from school because he would pick me up as soon as he left work, and he would always be there on time. I would come out, okay, get in the car. But I wanted to spend time with everybody, so I would tell him, oh, please don't pick me up.
Yeah,
And I would
leave me
walk
here.
home from school, which wasn't always the best alternative, but the best thing to do because I grew up in a very hot city. So the sun was always very strong, but it's everything to spend 10 or 15 minutes with my friends. So,
Yeah.
you said this word, and I want to check the pronunciation.
Subject.
So that's a little bit better. One thing we can do to improve further is to focus on the first syllable. Make this the stronger. Subject.
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 Okay.
So not subject, but subject.
The subject.
Math was my worst subject, for example. It was mine as well. And
we are language people.
yeah,
Language, these other topics. Reading.
This joke doesn't work in English because it's different, right? So in Portuguese we say letras, in English it's literature. But I used to say that I studied letters because I don't get along with numbers. So I have a problem with numbers. So there's a little bit of that.
Yeah, the same here.
I like which question is it? I like question 4. What is something that's not taught in schools that you think should be?
Well, as I said, I came from a state school, so there are a lack of important subjects in general. Now we have, and back then it was even worse. But I would like to have some crafts. I'm not sure about the word. Things that you make with your hands,
Crafting, yeah.
Crafting, exactly. Some like that. So something with paper or recycling material, this kind of thing, because I think it's interesting to us and help us to develop other abilities. And I think it would be important to have this, especially with the children, and then with the high school teenagers too.
Agreed. I think that would be interesting. I think for teenagers, I really wish there were classes focusing more on everyday life situations and things. So, for example, something to do with cooking. So I know that in Japan, for example, children learn how to cook in school. I believe they do. At least I've seen that in animes. I think that's awesome because, girls, more for better or for worse, they usually learn how to cook. Their moms teach them. But as a boy, I didn't. And now I'm paying the price for that.
But no, you have to learn anyway.
Yeah. And, I think it would be a very useful skill to have also because then we can help around the house as children. Basic economics, I think it would be awesome if we got it, understanding how this is not going to happen, obviously, but how investments works, how a business functions, like not very deeply, obviously, because we would be teenagers, but just understand the basics, like why would someone have a business instead of being an employee, or how would you start a business? Like, I think it would be interesting, perhaps not even from a technical perspective, but more like a philosophical perspective, even. Just have
But
these
then
conversations.
I have a good news for you, because these subjects are well included in the curriculum of the new high school.
Okay.
But, of course, this financial thing, I believe the teachers are not really prepared to teach the students about that. That is the point. So most of the time, the students don't think that is interesting. But I believe it's because of the methodology. And even cooking, some years ago, I saw there was that because the students can pick the topics in some schools. From where I come from was like that in Minas. I am from Minas Gerais. And they could have picked indigenous cooking, for example. But then you need to think, does the school have the material, the space? No. So there is the option there, but we don't have the structure to really offer this to the students. But it's there in the paper. So maybe in the future we see something happening.
I think we kind of circle back to a sentence you said that I really liked, which
Mm,
was, don't remember what it was exactly. You said something like there is a lack of, I don't remember what you said. It was a lack of.
don't remember neither.
Yeah. But let's say there is a lack of good professionals. Let's use this as
Yeah,
an
yeah.
example.
Not
Or
qualified, yeah.
there's a lack of preparation. So
Mm-hmm.
to be a lack of is a good phrase to say we don't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
We need more.
Yeah.
So we lack good professionals. We need more good professionals. We lack time. We need more time. So it's a nice phrase to
Mm-hmm.
use. Um, yeah, in a way, there I this makes me think of two things. One is we definitely need to do the basic better before we start to think about more things, right? Because it is very nice to say, "Oh, I wish there was this. I wish there was that." But
Yeah.
then, if the condition of the other things is uh, way worse, and so students are not developing, then maybe we need to focus on that a little bit more. And I guess it also scares me to think that we can wish that the curriculum had more and more things, so it gets more and more specialized. But then at some point, a government official somewhere might say, okay, so to be a school now, you need to have this, and that. And then the many schools will close.
Yeah.
And then because they just can't match the standard.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like perhaps it's okay, but then, a bad school I think is better than no school at all. So I don't.
And also, regards to that, I think that actually we should change the way the curriculum is made, because nowadays the high school students have 21 subjects, and that's a lot. So you put them many topics, but what about the quality of these topics? Are the students really learning what they are taking from that? And to me, as a teacher that I'm there for many years already, I think we should have less, but less with a higher quality,
Mm-hmm.
and really make sure that the students will leave school being able to read, being able to understand, being able to speak a second language, for example, because they are not. And simple calculations or understanding financials, I mean, the minimal base. And so
Mm-hmm.
it is like a little nonsensical to me, the way the things have been built so far, because there are a lot of topics with interesting names. And if you read about the topics, you think, oh, that's really interesting. The students are learning about that. I wish I could have learned when I was at school. But it,
Mm-hmm.
when you see the reality, is not like that. They are not really learning anything. It's only time spent out of a house.
Hmm. Yeah, so it looks and sounds good, but it's not really
No, no,
what
no.
you
It's a
expect.
terrible situation.
Yeah.
Should be a little dramatic, but yeah, it is.
Mm-hmm. You used the word I liked very much just now. You said nonsensical. Very nice word.
I use this a lot. So many things are nonsensical.
Very fancy. And
Yeah.
so, what does it say in the dictionary if we look it up? Uh, here. Silly or stupid. That's a very nice word. I really
Yeah.
like it. I also like this word, which is a synonym. Preposterous.
No, that is a long, difficult word. Preposterous. I have never seen before.
It's as long as nonsensical, actually, I'd say.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but you can see they have the same definition. You can think about it as ridiculous as well. So ridiculous sounds more acceptable to our Brazilian ears, probably. And you can use
Mm-hmm.
preposterous exactly the same way. Yeah, so the stress
Preposterous.
goes in the pa.
Yeah.
Preposterous.
Preposterous. Okay, good to know.
But nonsensical is great. You can just keep using nonsensical. It's just this word I do use often for pastors as well. You reminded me of the old adage. Adage is another fancy word. A
Adage.
wise saying.
Saying. Oh,
Yeah. So an old wise saying, which is less is more.
yes. Yes.
Less is more. So I definitely do think that. Old adage I'll put here. And
Adage.
you said
That is new to
something.
me too, adage.
Yeah, it is. These are a bit of a bit of fancy words, to be honest. And
Yeah.
what I mean by that is that you're not necessarily going to hear them on everyday conversations, but they're nice words to know.
Yeah, it is indeed.
As a simpler version of this would be saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Saying.
heard a saying.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say you said something along these lines, but I think that this phrase would fit a bit better. As someone who lives this, I think, yada, yada, yada. Either live or experience, they would fit. So if you want to highlight the fact that, hey, I know this from experience, and so as someone who lives this, yada, yada, yada.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I want to touch on this less is more thing again because I haven't really taught in public schools or high school, but I did teach in regular language schools.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a common problem that they sell a package. The way that it attracts people's attentions is, oh my God, there's so much on this package. I'm going to learn this, I'm going to learn that. And it looks nice on paper. But then when it comes to the actual class time, you don't have the time to go over everything.
No,
And
exactly. Yeah.
it becomes an exercise of prioritizing and just deleting stuff. And unfortunately, English teachers are not. Uh, Many people identify as English teachers, but most of them don't have qualifications, right? So
Yes.
because to teach at these schools, you just need to be accepted. Essentially,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
am qualified, but I wouldn't have to be. And so there are many people that they might have excellent intentions, they might have good English, but they don't really know what is important and what is not important to teach. And often they just delete stuff. And people have this experience of like, oh, I went to the school, but I did the grammar, and then oh, let's now practice. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, guys, look at that. The time is up. We'll practice next week. And then next week they forget about that and they just start the
Yes.
next grammar point. So there's very little practice because, well, if I do conversation practice, it will be good for them, but then I'm going to be behind on the syllabus, and the syllabus says grammar. So, I have to
Mm,
teach the grammar because it's going to be on the test. And then if the
exactly.
students don't pass the test, then I'm going to get in trouble. So at the end point of all this is the students, maybe they will pass the test, they will learn the grammar, but they can't speak. So because
Exactly.
of this whole put
Mm.
as many stuff as you can in the package.
But you mentioned the perfect word actually, because if they left school knowing grammar, would be great. Because the theoretical part. But when we speak about public schools, they don't even know grammar. If you ask any public school student, they will tell you, in my 11 years in public school, all I have learned is verb to be. And even so, if you ask conjugate the to be, they don't know how to do that. So it's like that is another topic that it is really interesting to me as someone who, as I forgot the example that you just gave me, as who,
As someone who
how to say it?
lives, as someone who lives
As
this,
as someone who lives it. I have been studying English for some years now, and it's like they spend 11, 12 years in the school. How can't they leave school? Can't they leave school not speaking English? That sentence is not correct.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, or Spanish, because some of them have Spanish.
Yeah,
They
some
are
people have bad taste.
unable. Yeah. So what is the problem? Is the teachers. The problem is are the teachers, or the problem is the teachers, or the problems are the lack, or the lack of interest from the students.
Oh,
True.
it's everything, really, isn't it? I mean, teachers, they are one. You might be very passionate to be a teacher. You know, you kind of have to be, honestly, because otherwise you would just give up and find something else to do. Because you're not going to become rich being a teacher.
Yeah. No.
At least not if you're just a employee. Yeah, if you become
Yeah.
an entrepreneur, maybe your luck. My luck has changed basically because I
Yeah.
started my own business.
Exactly.
Um, so you kind of have to do it for love. But even if you do it for love, it's tiring, right? When you do things and you don't get results, when you see that people don't care, the students don't care, your coworkers don't care,
Okay.
and you start to become frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
and then you don't care either. It's like I pretend I teach, you pretend you learn, and then
Yes.
life goes on. So that is all to say that that's part of the reason why it doesn't work, and people have just given up, and nobody expects it to work. Like nobody expects
Yes.
to go to school these days and learn how to speak. It's really literally not an expectation. And the methodology that we use just doesn't work for that as well. There are methodologies that could work where you could have like 40 students in a class and still manage to get people to speak. That could work. I can make that
Yeah.
happen. But it requires energy, it requires investment of time. And if I don't have the resources and I don't have the energy and I don't think I'm not paid enough to do that,
Mm.
then I'm not going to do it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
nobody learns.
There's not without reason that Brazil is a big market for English teachers, because there are enough people for everybody to teach English, I would say. Because in certain moment of life, usually we will realize I need to speak at least English, at least. So you have different nowadays with the internet. We find different kind of teachers, different approach to teaching English. So I think there are space, there are room for everybody to teach English, because they don't use the time that they have in school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm maybe I'm being too judgmental, because they don't have a really qualified teachers. The teachers are not pay enough. The teachers are not motivated enough. So late in life, they will find a way to learn the language. They probably will need some of them at least.
Yeah. There are other cultural elements to that as well. One is, Brazil is enormous. So we don't really, many people spend their whole lives without ever meeting a foreigner, not even an English speaker foreigner, just a foreigner, an
Yeah.
Argentinian, a Paraguayan, whatever. Because of the size of the country, one of the reasons why Europeans usually speak more than one language is because you leave your house, there was a guy from Spain. You walk
Yeah.
down the street, there is an Englishman. And so the smaller size of the country also makes this possible. You have more neighbors and things like that. So there's also that cultural element to it. Yeah,
That's true. It
it
is
is a
hard
big
for
market.
us. You really need to be willing to learn
Hmm.
and put a lot of effort to leave this place and be able to speak. 'Cause I think last time I read, only 1 or 2% of Brazilians are able to speak English fluently, which means really, really a low number,
It is.
considering the size of the country
The
and
last
considering that we study English the whole life. So,
the last census, I think, was taken. 4% of Brazilians identified as being able to speak English, and 1% identified as being advanced speakers. So it's not like they tested, they just basically asked
They
people, like,
say.
do you speak English? Yes, I do. Yeah. But I believe that number because, one, people tend to be more negative about their skills
Mm-hmm.
than they are confident. So I see more people that speak good English, but they would say they speak bad English essentially, but they would still, oh, I can, I can speak a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of English, even if
I
their
can
English is bad.
survive. Yeah.
And if they have good English, they might still say, my English is not that great. So, meaning we might have more advanced speakers than that, but
Yeah.
perhaps it's an accurate number.
Yeah, we have a problem with our confidence to speak.
But I'd say it's um we're talking a lot about English for obvious reasons, but um the same is true if you for like other school subjects,
Mm-hmm.
like take Portuguese for example. I remember very little from Portuguese that I studied in school, and there were certain things that I only understood as an adult. So, for example, using the for porquês, I
Mm-hmm.
understood as an adult. When I was in school, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, when it comes to writing, right, and composition, I sucked at it. I was flunked more than once by my teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't know what I was doing wrong, what I needed to do right. I only actually learned how to write when I became a university teacher and professor, and I had to teach my students how to write essays. And then I was like, okay, what
Mm-hmm.
do you need to have a good essay? Okay, you need a statement. Okay, you need to support the statement. You need to give examples of the supportive statements and so on. And so I realized two things then. One is it's not as bad as I thought it was. And two, my teachers were not very good
Yeah, also. Yeah.
because they couldn't make me understand it. And I felt like an idiot. And I'm not going to say that I was particularly smart, but I was definitely average.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, essentially.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Portuguese is another thing, exactly as you mentioned, because we don't know our own language.
mhm,
Don't. It is hard to memorize, and is that really necessary to know all the rules? We should know how to write properly, but
mhm,
and to speak properly, I'd say. But all the things that they should learn, that they learn actually, according to the curriculum, is not really necessary. And actually, this leads me to this question that I saw and I liked, that is number 5. If you could have skipped one subject in school,
there you go.
which one would you have been and why?
Uh-huh. Would you like me to go first?
Of course.
Of course. No doubt about it. Um, well, two come to mind. One is definitely maths, but it's mostly due to affinity. I understand how important math is. I have no doubt it's
Mm-hmm.
important, but I don't believe that everybody needs to be a master at math.
Yes.
So, especially if we have calculators and artificial intelligence these days. So I had very little affinity with math. I'd say if I studied it till like fifth grade or eighth grade, like that would be
Mm-hmm.
fine. I can find the square root of x. That's good enough. I don't need more than that.
But but can you?
I still can. I
Oh,
believe
that's
so.
like.
Nothing too complex, but I can do like the basic equation. I'm sure that I can do math up to like sixth or seventh grade. I can do that.
Mm.
Um, so that's one thing. And the other one would probably art, which is the opposite of what you said you wanted more of. So
Yeah.
I hated the crafting part of it, and I had was it seventh grade? I think it was. In seventh grade, I had this art teacher that he would have us paint paintings,
Mm-hmm.
and he would grade us based on the painting. And I did this painting. I worked hard on it, and we had to categorize it. So it was an impressionist painting, a expressionist painting. I guessed. I don't remember. And he was just like 9. Well, why? I'm deducting the point because I got the type wrong. And I'm like, fuck you. You know, like I was in 7th grade. I knew how to say fuck. So I didn't tell him to his face. But
Uh-huh. That
yeah.
was a thought.
What
Um,
about you?
I wouldn't take out math, but I would reduce what is taught in math, actually, because I think they teach us a lot of unnecessary things. It's my dream to learn math, actually. It's something that I intend to do once I retire, because it is interesting to be able to calculate things and understand how it works. But art, I agree with you. In the theoretical part, I like more practical things, you know. So why should I know this name of art of painters or whatever? No, it's boring. I like to do something with my hands, but not sit and learn about that. No, no. So I would remove art, and yeah, from the what I had, only art and something from math.
Yeah. So, but I just feel like there's depending on the when you know more or less like what areas you're good at. I feel like you should be able to focus more on those areas, right?
Yeah.
So if exact sciences are not for you, which were not for me, then okay, let me focus on humanities. And if humanities is not for you, then you can focus on science or exact sciences, and
Yeah,
just be happy with
be
your
great.
choices.
Yeah,
I feel
save
like
time.
there is much. It goes back to what we were saying about less is more,
Mhm.
right? Because if we don't have to be good at everything, then we can prioritize the things that really matter, right? And I understand that some countries already have their school systems built this way. So I don't know why we can't do the same. I believe that in the past it used to be like that. When my mother went to school, she tells me there was like science high school, classic high school, which was more towards like literature, the humanities
Mhm.
sides of it. So yeah, I think that was a good thing. Should probably come back.
Yeah, having choice is always better. Usually, it's not the case.
Mhm.
And
Oh, before we continue,
oh, mhm.
let me ask you. Oh, I already put this word here, but I'm not sure we talked about it.
No,
Can you say it for me?
theoretical.
Ah, so you pronounce it a bit differently this time.
When
Uh,
I speak, it's harder.
yeah. So the stress, I believe, is in the rat.
Mhm.
Theoretical. Theoretical.
Theoretical. Mhm.
So the theoretical part of it is useful. The hands-on part of it, not so much the practical part of it.
Hands-on.
So theory and practice.
Theoretical. Great.
Mhm. Useful words so far. I mentioned earlier the word resource. So the materials available. So
Mhm.
if you don't have the resources, the right materials, then it's hard to teach. For example, I like to use the word judgmental. Often we can say, I don't want to be judgmental when you're about to be judgmental. People like to say that, right? Or I don't want to be judgmental, but
But
yada yada yada. Or it's very similar. Similarly, you can say it's going to sound judgmental,
yeah, that's
but
good.
yada yada
Mhm.
yada. So I like this one a little bit better because this one feels like you're not, but it feels like you're almost
Mhm.
apologizing in advance for your opinion.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I don't like that. So this is like I understand this might be misunderstood, but here you go. I use the word average to talk about my performance in school, so that's a good word. If you're
Yes.
not the best, but you're not the worst, you're average. We can also use it as a noun to talk about the expected grade, the expected result to pass the test. Yeah, so I could say I was an average student, or the average to pass the test was 6.
Okay.
For example, we could say that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if it was you or I, but one of us said, "This leads to." I think it was you. I liked it very much. So, for example, not studying, and I believe this is true, so not studying Portuguese leads to poor critical thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Because so I feel like, obviously, when we study Portuguese, we want to adapt to the standards of the language, because we are going to be judged if we speak poorly, if we write poorly. Everybody, yes, let's everybody be inclusive and accept everybody as they are. But if you're like, come on, speak properly at work, you need to.
Yeah.
But I think that the thing I miss from people these days is critical thinking, is being able to understand what is being said,
Yes.
and and not take it to the wrong, not take it the wrong play, not take it the wrong way. Because this really bugs me these days. I used to believe that it's your responsibility what people understand, right? Because if people don't understand you, it's because you're not a good communicator. But
Mm-hmm.
ever since I started an Instagram account, I understood that that's not the case.
Yeah.
It actually doesn't matter how well you communicate. There will always be people that don't understand you, and that's not necessarily your fault. Obviously, it can always be better, but some people, they just don't have the critical thinking to do it.
Yeah, it's some kind of blindness, and
Hmm.
we cannot
Yeah,
do anything about it.
and so that's one reason why I think that Portuguese for us Brazilians and English for Americans and whatever language to whatever other nationality is so important. It's a way to
Yes.
develop critical thinking. And also why writing could be important, because if you teach people to write, you teach them to think.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have to write a text defending your opinion, you are basically building your case.
Yeah.
Yeah, and why you think that way, and why that is good or why that is bad. And so to build your case, that's also good for us. So put it there.
Yeah,
Um,
writing actually, to me, reading and writing go together. If you
mhm,
read a lot, of course, really reading, not these social media things, books, okay, good books,
mhm.
good source of information, and you write about that, about your thoughts or something else, you will develop better your critical thinking, and for consequence, will be a better human being.
I think so too. I do.
Mm,
As a consequence, that was a good phrase.
mm,
As a consequence, you'll be a better human being. Earlier I said I said, oh, I knew the word fuck, so I said fuck, but I didn't say it to his face. Yeah.
mhm,
So if I say something to someone's face, I say it in front of them so they can hear. Yeah,
mm,
it's like the opposite of to say something behind their back, which is like gossip,
mhm.
right? I'm not
Yes.
proud. That's what I did. So I was like, fuck that
Mm.
guy. He doesn't know anything.
It's part of
It,
life.
it is. It is.
You will protect his feeling. We can think like that. Sometimes it's important.
I was protecting my ass because I didn't want to.
But it's part of the social thing. We need to pay attention to what we say, what we share. So,
I didn't want to flunk the class.
flank,
Yeah. If you
flank
flunk
is
the
new.
class, Yeah, you fail, essentially.
Oh,
Yeah, so you could say he flunked me. He failed me. And lastly, we're talking about math and we mentioned calculate. But another, a more, yeah, that works. We can say calculate, but a more common way to say this is just to say to do the math.
to do the math. Oh, okay. Yeah. It's easier.
So, uh, I don't know if this is a good idea. And you say, come on, it's obvious. If you do this, there will be more of that. Do the math.
Mm-hmm.
So,
To the math.
you can use it that way. So that's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Quick announcement. Se você já se comunica em inglês, mas sente que a sua pronúncia deixa a desejar, falantes nativos te olham confusos, pedem para você se repetir com frequência, ou pior, lançam um bom e velho you mean, e repetem a exata palavra que você achou que tinha dito, eu te convido a conhecer o Speak American, o meu curso de pronúncia em inglês 100% prático para brasileiros. Você nunca fez nada igual e se você der a chance, ele pode mudar o seu inglês e a sua vida para sempre, assim como já mudou de vários outros alunos. Você pode saber mais em leapfube.com/sam. Link na descrição. Back to the podcast. Let's see. Let's pick. I have some other questions.
The last one, how much should the students' mental well-being be considered in relation to academics? It's a good question indeed. Because I think in general, people are struggling with the mental well-being nowadays. Life is hard. And I don't know exactly if it is because the social media, the mobiles, the exposure that we deal in our daily basis, where we compare, maybe we are comparing our lives too much with the others, so we feel depressed. But in the schools, we have a lot of problems with that indeed. And I don't believe that if a person it is not well mentally, they could go well in the academics, in the topics, in the school life. So both things should work together, but we don't have research to that. That is the truth. So for example, as a teacher, I have a classroom with 35 students, and they are individuals with particularities. And of course, I notice some problems, so specific problems, but I don't really know what to do, and I don't have what to do. Actually, I can tell my supervisor, this person is going through something. That's why this person is failing my test, is failing my topic, my subject. But in the academic environment, I don't really know how to treat that. It's really complicated because we have a lot of things to do, and
Yeah.
it's just not easy. It is important to be considered because we are not only, we are social, psychological, and biological beings. So everything should be considered, but it is really complicated inside of a school to give all the necessary support to students.
Yeah, I think you make me think of a couple of. First, I feel that one problem is that in a lot of the responsibilities they used to fall solely on the side of the family part, people are saying, we have to talk about it as being part of a responsibility of the school. So, for example, mental health. I would consider that to be the responsibility of the mom and the dad. You got to make sure that your son or your daughter is feeling well and ready to go to school. And if they're not, you have to make the decision not to let them go to school or to get them. Obviously, financial conditions would apply, but to a school that better fits their needs. So I believe it used to be the parents' responsibility, and now they wanted to share with the school. So I think that's a problem. I have this memory of when I used to teach at a language school here in Brazil, and I had this very difficult student, and I tried a bunch of stuff. I even got that. I tried that military tactic of like, I would punish everybody for his behavior
Mm.
so that the other children would turn on him. And like, this will sound awful, but it works. Bully him to behave. Yeah, essentially like, oh, be quiet because I don't want more homework because of you, or be quiet because I don't want to have to do this extra exercise because of you. Yeah, so that helped a bit. But at some point, he was like, everybody hates me, so fuck you, fuck everybody. So I called his mom, and what she said to me was basically, "Oh, teacher, I don't know what else to do. Please talk to him."
Yeah,
Like,
that's the
I
situation.
called you here so you could talk to him
Yeah.
and be the person to tell this kid to set him straight. Yeah, so he would behave and everything. But they were delegating that
Yeah.
forward
Yes.
to me.
Exactly.
So that's one big problem. And the second is what we were saying earlier, that oh, as a teacher you were expected to be a master in psychology now and understand how to deal with every possible kind of child. Because it's your responsibility to be understandable. Sorry, not to be understandable. It's your responsibility to be understanding, ing, and not their responsibility to behave.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, if the child is problematic, it's because you don't know how to deal with the child.
Yes.
It's not that because the child is difficult. It's because there is something happening there that is not their fault. And obviously, often children are a reflection of their parents. I believe that 100%. But it's not your fault
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about honestly, we teachers, it's not part of our education as teachers to learn this. I
Exactly.
learned the basics of pedagogy,
Mm-hmm.
and I did learn a little bit about dealing with like autistic children, things like that. But it wasn't extensive. It was like one subject, part of
Yes.
one subject in one semester. So you can't be expected to be a master at this. And at the end of the day, you're not paid well enough
Exactly.
to justify
Exactly.
pursuing in your own free time the knowledge to become better at this.
Yeah.
Because even if you become better at this, it's not going to improve your professional life.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
anything, like I remember I worked really hard to be a better professional when I used to work at language schools. And my um, reward for that was that they would give me the worst classes because, oh, Felipe knows how to deal with them.
Yeah.
So my life got worse actually
Uh-huh.
because now I had to deal with this sounds awful, but with the shitty people, the shitty
Yes.
students. And I don't mean that they were shitty because they were bad people necessarily, but they were just difficult.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that very much.
Yeah, it is really complicated. It's really complicated because, as I said, it is a classroom full of students, really full of students. You gotta prepare your material. You gotta study and develop a good methodology in order to then to learn something, at least a little bit. And when September comes, you are also obliged to have some kind of mental health uh, um, event to the students. Usually they require it from us. You need to teach, you need to talk about mental health with the students. But I was not prepared to that. So
Mhm.
in the daily basis, we need to deal with these specific problems, and we also need to talk about this with them. And the
Mhm.
families are away dealing with other things. Usually,
Mhm.
and huh,
So that's, yeah, I do believe that the worst part of it all, to use the phrase I used earlier, is that families, parents, they are delegating,
delegating, delegating.
uh, to delegate, sorry. They are delegating raising their children, or they're delegating their children's mental health, let's put it this way, to the school,
Yeah,
when it shouldn't be the school's responsibility, right? But
exactly.
they have to do it now, because if they don't, then it's going to be worse than it already is. Um,
Yes, yes.
so there is that. Let's see, a few other useful things. You just used this word, and I liked it very much. You said obliged.
Yeah,
Obliged to mean like obligated.
yeah.
You must do that. So we are obliged to do, what did you say? Was it a meeting, a presentation?
Yeah, to talk to them about mental health during the September month.
Mhm. There you go. So I really like this. We are obliged. I'd say obligated sounds more common for me than
Mm-hmm.
obliged, but I really like it very much. And there is a, you can also say, much obliged.
Much.
It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
an old way to say you're welcome. Oh no, sorry. Thank you very much.
Oh,
So if someone does something for you and say much obliged, it it's kind of ancient. You wouldn't really
sounds formal, actually.
it would be considered very formal. I would use
Uh,
it if I'm talking to a friend and I want to be funny, because for anyone that wants to be funny, especially in another language, it's just to remember that if you exaggerate the language, then you are being funny. So if you are overly formal in a context where there is no reason to be formal, then you can be a bit funny. And
yes.
so someone did something for me,
Much obliged.
much obliged.
Much
Even
obliged.
making like a fancy voice, much obliged.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's a
cool
good
to
one.
know. Uh,
I mentioned the word reward.
yeah.
So I said something like, there is no reward to learning this stuff. There's no professional, it's not going to help your career in any way. There's no
Mm-hmm.
professional benefit. You said human beings a few times. I think you said we're social biological beings, and that
Mm-hmm.
works. I liked it the first time you used it. Then I thought, well, is there another way to say that? And there is, especially if social. People really like to use the word animals.
Social animal.
Yeah, so we would say, for example, people are social animals.
Mm-hmm.
We, I don't remember exactly what you said afterwards, but let's say we need to interact with others, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just as an example. So in literature, you'd see that a lot. I liked the adjective considerate. And if you're considerate, then you consider other people's feelings. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say this because this might upset her. So I'm going to say this other thing. Or someone that say, you're not considerate. And let's say maybe someone, this is awful, but there you go. Someone lost their pet, and then I'm making a joke about a dog dying. And like,
Mm-hmm.
that's awful. You would say that I'm a jerk, but you could also say that that's inconsiderate. And so I'm not thinking
Inconsiderate.
about the feelings of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or the opposite.
Great. Inconsiderate.
Mhm. I think earlier you were looking to use the word exposure.
Exposure.
I don't remember exactly. It's in the recording, so later people
The
can go back
the
and listen.
exposure to the social media.
Yeah,
Explosion. I didn't know exactly what to say. Exposure or explosions?
Mm-hmm.
Explosion.
You have exposure, so that's the noun, and
Uh-huh.
you have the verb, which is to expose
Expose.
or to be exposed. Usually we use in the passive voice. So you could,
Mm-hmm.
children are exposed to, let's say, bad things on social media. So it has this quality that we would also use in Portuguese, as são expostas. So they are exposed.
Mm-hmm.
You said a few times something like they walk together
Mm-hmm.
to mean that things are connected.
Yes.
And I like a part, I think the first time you used this verb, you said go together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time you used walk together. So go together is good. So go
Go
together is very nice. And
Mm-hmm.
an alternative, if you want to be more literary, more visual about it, you can go, they go hand in hand.
Hand in hand. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
So, for example, you know, mm, being a good teacher goes hand in hand with liking kids. I don't know if this is true, but it's just an example. Yeah. Or being healthy goes hand in hand with exercising. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to separate them, essentially. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we want to say. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
There is one last thing that I did say. I said that I called a mom to talk to the mom because I was hoping she would set her child straight.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you set somebody straight, it's like they are bad in some way. Maybe they're dishonest if they're an adult, like they're cheating people, things like this. Or if they're a child, maybe they're misbehaving
Mm-hmm.
and talking too much in class or calling other children's names. And like set him straight is like, you know,
It's
put
good to know.
put fear, the fear of God into this kid. And so
Uh-huh.
I essentially said I was hoping she would have a talk with him and set him straight.
Setting straight.
That's a good one.
It is.
And I'll finish this by recommending a book.
Oh,
Maybe you will
great.
like it. Do you know the book Teacher Misery?
No.
Okay, so it's an interesting book. Teacher Misery, Helicopter Parents, Special Snowflakes, and Other Bullshit. The Kindle version is reasonably priced, so
Yes, really. Really
you can
affordable.
use it. And it's basically the stories of a teacher. Yeah, so she talks about the experiences she had. She comedically, so the stories are mostly funny. I'm gonna be honest, I had a hard time at times because it triggered me.
Mm.
Yeah, so if people don't know, if you're triggered, essentially it reminds you of bad experiences. It's
Oh.
traumatic. It makes you nervous. Not because I experienced them exactly, but because I could see myself in those
No.
situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was like, "Oh fuck, I can see myself here. I don't want to read this." So it is, as a teacher, I found it funny and triggering at the same
Uh-huh.
time.
Great.
Yeah,
I'll
so
check it out.
you tell me what you think later.
And what is snowflakes?
Mm-hmm.
That is
Uh, it's a snowflake, so I can show
special.
you an image.
Snowflakes. Snowflakes.
So this is a snowflake,
Ah.
as you can see. So it's a reference to this snow slash ice thing. And but we also use it can also be used sarcastically to talk about overly sensitive people.
Oh,
Yeah, so
okay.
people that get offended very easily, or people that don't have enough hardships in their lives. So spoiled people.
Mhm.
It has become as well very much used specifically to talk about spoiled white people. Yeah, so like, oh, you're a snowflake. So there's also this connotation of snow being white and everything. But you could technically use for children of any color and other people
It's
just to
it's good to know. Yeah.
so to highlight
Check it out.
this. Once I was watching a debate and someone said something like, "I don't mean to offend or hurt." I don't remember which word they use. Your snowflake sensibilities.
Oh.
So this is a very sarcastic
Yes.
uh, comment to be like, "Oh, I said something that upset you, right? The truth hurts, right? I'm
Mhm.
sorry."
Yeah.
You know, I remember that the guy who said this was being incredibly annoying. But there you go. So it wasn't
Mhm. Okay, I will
always show
check
up.
out this book. Thank you very much.
Homework time. Escolha uma palavra ou frase que você aprendeu nesse episódio para usar intencionalmente no seu inglês essa semana. Você pode começar na nossa seção de comentários. Selecione uma das perguntas que a gente respondeu e compartilhe a sua opinião usando o vocabulário. I look forward to reading your comment.